I thought I married the perfect husband until I found the first clue, part. Have you ever been so sure you married the perfect man, only to realize you were living in a lie? This is my story, and it begins with a single clue that shattered everything I thought I knew about love and loyalty. I used to believe I was the kind of woman who had it all figured out. By 30, I wasn't rich, I wasn't famous, but I had the one thing I thought mattered most: stability. A good man, a happy home, a marriage built on trust. At least that's what I told myself. That's what I told everyone who asked. My husband and I had been married for 4 years. We had a little boy who was just learning to string sentences together. To the outside world, we looked like the picture of happiness. He worked at a multinational company, wore suits that made him look sharp but never flashy, and carried himself with the kind of quiet confidence that made people trust him instantly. I used to watch him from across a room, holding our son, talking to my parents, laughing with friends, and I'd think, this is the man people write about when they talk about good husbands. Every morning he woke up before me. The smell of coffee drifting from the kitchen was my alarm clock. He'd toast bread, sometimes make eggs, cut up fruit into tiny pieces for our son's daycare snack. By the time I walked in, he'd already packed the lunchbox and set out my travel mug. "Vanilla latte with just a little sugar, right?" he'd ask, like he didn't already know. We had our little rituals. He drove me to work every single day, dropped our son off at daycare, and picked us up in the evening. Even if traffic was bad, even if his own day had been exhausting, he showed up. Always. When he traveled for work, he called every night. He'd FaceTime just to watch our son eat dinner, just to remind me that he cared. Sometimes he'd ask about the most mundane things. "Did you remember to charge your phone? Did you refill the diaper bag?" At the time, I thought it was sweet, endearing, proof that he was involved even from miles away. On birthdays, anniversaries, and even small holidays, he never forgot a gift. Not always expensive things, but thoughtful. A scarf I once admired in a store window. A novel by my favorite author. Flowers for my mother on Mother's Day, signed with our son's name scribbled in crayon. He wasn't just my husband. He was the son-in-law my parents thanked God for. And we didn't fight. Not really. If I snapped at him, he stayed calm. He'd let me vent, then later say something like, "Let's figure out the why, not just the what." He had a way of making me feel like we were a team. Like we were stronger than whatever problem we faced. I bragged about him constantly. At work, at family gatherings, to friends. "I got lucky," I'd say. "He's the real deal." And I believed it with every fiber of my being. But trust is a dangerous thing. It builds walls around you. It blinds you to the cracks. The first crack was a whisper. A friend told me she thought she saw my husband at a cafe, but not with me. With another woman. I laughed it off. "No way. You must have been mistaken. My husband barely went to cafes, let alone with company." Then another comment from a neighbor. "Hey, I saw your husband at the mall the other day. He was shopping with someone. You weren't with him, were you?" I shook my head, forced a smile. Probably a coworker, but my chest tightened. Still, I didn't believe it. I refused to. He was steady, predictable. He wasn't the type. I checked his phone one night while he showered. Nothing. Messages clean. No hidden apps, no secret folders. I even opened his laptop. Emails were normal. Work bills, reminders. His paychecks came home on time. He gave me his full salary, never complained about expenses. He wasn't suddenly buying cologne or fancy clothes. His routine stayed the same. If he was cheating, he was leaving no trace, and I convinced myself that was proof of innocence. "Don't be paranoid," I whispered to myself. "Don't ruin something good with baseless suspicion." But the unease stayed. Then came the messages. Anonymous texts from numbers I didn't recognize. Short, sharp sentences that sliced through my peace. "Your husband isn't who you think he is. He has another woman. You deserve to know the truth." At first, I thought it was spam, but then the details became specific. He wasn't at work last Tuesday. He was with her. My blood ran cold. I tried calling the number. No answer. I sent back messages. "Who is this? What do you want?" Silence. Then another message. "Poor you. He's lying to your face." I sat in the dark, staring at my phone, my heart pounding. Was this real? Was someone targeting me, or was this the truth I didn't want to face? When he came home that night, smiling, carrying groceries, kissing my cheek as if nothing had happened, I felt sick. I wanted to scream, to confront him, but I didn't. Instead, I smiled back, because what if it wasn't true? What if I accused him and I was wrong? What if my paranoia became the very thing that destroyed our marriage? So I kept it inside. I buried it deep. I carried on as if everything was normal, but the whispers, the texts, they haunted me. Every time he said, "I love you," I heard those messages echoing in my head. Every time he told me good night, I wondered who else he was saying it to. Then came the family trip. My parents had planned it for months, a week-long getaway to the beach. They wanted us all together, relaxing, enjoying each other. I was excited. Our son loved the ocean. I pictured him building sandcastles with his grandparents, running along the waves. But my husband said he couldn't come. Work was too busy. He looked genuinely regretful. "You should still go," he insisted. "He'll love it. You'll have fun." He helped pack our bags, folded my dresses, tucked in our son's tiny swimsuits, reminded me to bring sunscreen and snacks. He kissed us both goodbye at the airport and said, "Don't worry about me. I'll be fine." For the first few days, I believed him. He messaged constantly, "Send me pictures. I miss you both. Kiss our boy for me." He sounded sincere, but deep inside, something shifted. I couldn't relax. Even as I watched my son laugh in the waves, even as my parents teased me for checking my phone too much, my chest was heavy. I smiled, but it was forced. I laughed, but it was hollow. At night, lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling, my mind racing, and then on the 5th day, I broke. I told my parents I needed to go home early. They asked why. I couldn't answer. I just said I had a bad feeling. They thought I was being dramatic. Maybe I was, but I couldn't shake it, so I changed my ticket, packed up my son, and boarded a plane home. When we landed, it was late afternoon. The sky was turning gold. I drove straight to our house, my heart pounding the whole way. His car was in the driveway. That wasn't unusual. But what I saw next changed everything. On the doorstep, neatly placed, was a pair of women's high heels. Elegant, stylish, expensive. Shoes I had never seen before. I froze. My throat went dry. My palms began to sweat. I tried to tell myself, maybe they belong to a guest. Maybe it's nothing. But in my bones, I knew. I stood there clutching my son, staring at those shoes, feeling my world tilt, because when I opened that door, I would step into a nightmare I never saw coming. I stood there on the doorstep for what felt like an eternity. My hands were trembling, my son shifting in my arms, too young to understand why his mother's heart was racing out of control. Those shoes, they burned into my vision. Every detail, black leather, pointed toe, a faint red sole. Shoes that didn't belong to me, shoes that didn't belong in my home. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself, telling myself that I was overreacting. Maybe a friend stopped by. Maybe a relative visited. Maybe there was an explanation. My brain spun 1,000 excuses, each thinner than the last. And then, I opened the door. The house smelled different. Not of dinner, not of baby powder, not of us. It smelled like perfume, heavy, floral, cloying, the kind that sticks to the air and announces itself before you even see who's wearing it. I stepped inside. My feet felt like lead. My arms tightened around my son. And then I saw it, him, my husband, the man who kissed me goodbye just days ago, who texted me, "I miss you," that very morning. He was on our couch, and with him, a woman I had never seen before. They weren't just sitting close. They weren't just talking. They were entangled, hands, lips, bodies, on our couch, the same couch where I rocked our baby to sleep, the couch where we watched cartoons on Saturday mornings, the couch with crumbs from family dinners, with stains from spilled juice, with memories woven into its fabric. And now it was tainted forever. I froze. My son whimpered softly, sensing the tension, the chaos radiating from me. My husband's eyes went wide. He scrambled, fumbling for his clothes. But she didn't move. She didn't panic. She looked right at me, calm, composed, and smirked. Her lips curled into a smile that felt like a knife. "Oh," she said lightly. "You're home early." I will never forget that voice, that tone. It wasn't fear. It wasn't guilt. It was challenge. Like she was daring me to react. In that instant, my chest caved in. My world collapsed. And yet I couldn't scream. Couldn't cry. Couldn't move. I just stood there, clutching my child, staring at the scene in front of me. My husband finally pushed her away, pulling on his shirt, stumbling over his words. "It's not baby. Listen, I can explain." But there was no explanation that could erase what I had just seen. Something inside me shattered. For days after, I moved through life like a ghost. He tried half-heartedly to act normal, but he didn't apologize. He didn't beg. He didn't even try to lie convincingly. He just carried on. We began sleeping in separate rooms. He didn't ask to come back to bed. I didn't invite him. Our house turned cold, quiet, filled with a silence heavier than any fight. At meals, we barely spoke. He focused on his plate. I focused on keeping our son entertained, pretending everything was fine. But it wasn't fine. It was broken. I wanted to confront him, to demand answers. But every time I opened my mouth, nothing came out. What was there to ask? The evidence was burned into my mind. The image of them on the couch played on repeat, day and night. And worse, she haunted me. Her smirk, her confidence, the way she looked at me like I was the outsider, like I was the problem. I started piecing things together. His sudden increase in business trips, the nights he claimed to be stuck late at the office, the excuses that never quite added up. And then came the cruelest realization of all. The night I gave birth. I had always told myself that he missed it because of a last-minute work trip, that it wasn't his fault, that he wanted to be there but couldn't. I forgave him for that absence, carried it as just one of life's unfortunate circumstances. But now I knew the truth. He wasn't at work. He wasn't on a plane. He wasn't in a meeting. He was with her. While I was in a hospital bed, sweating, crying, bringing our son into the world, he was in another bed, with another woman. That realization broke something in me that can never be repaired. I lay awake at night, staring at the ceiling, my son asleep beside me, wondering how I could have been so blind, how I could have built him up as this perfect husband, this model father, when in reality he was living a double life right under my nose. I replayed every moment in my head. The trips, the texts, the times he smiled at me, said, "I love you," kissed me before leaving. Were those lies too? Did he mean any of it? Or was it all just a cover for the life he was living with her? And yet, even with all of that, he never apologized, not once. He never came to me, tears in his eyes, begging for forgiveness. He never admitted fault. He never promised to change. He just carried on, as if nothing happened, as if I was the crazy one for caring. At times, I wanted to scream at him, to throw the betrayal in his face. At other times, I wanted to collapse into his arms, to beg him to choose me, to fight for us. But he didn't fight. He didn't even flinch. I felt invisible. One evening, I tried. I sat across from him at the kitchen table, our son asleep in the next room. My hands shook as I spoke. "Why?" I asked quietly. He didn't look up. "Why what? Why her? Why us? Why now?" He shrugged, stabbing at his food. "It's not what you think." I laughed bitterly. "I walked in on you. What else am I supposed to think?" "Silence. Say something," I begged. "Anything. Tell me you're sorry. Tell me it was a mistake. Tell me you still love me. Just tell me something." Finally, he looked at me. His eyes were flat, lifeless. "I won't say something I don't mean." That sentence, that cold, heartless sentence, it echoed in my head for days. I realized then that he didn't care. Not about me. Not about us. Not about the family we built. And in that moment, I felt more alone in my marriage than I ever had in my life. After that night at the kitchen table, something inside me went numb. It's strange. When you first discover betrayal, the pain is sharp, unbearable, like a blade twisting in your chest. But after weeks of silence, of watching him carry on as if nothing happened, the pain dulled into something worse. A heavy emptiness. We became strangers under the same roof. He moved through the house like a ghost, cold, detached. He didn't look at me, didn't speak to me unless absolutely necessary. And when he did, it was short, clipped, lifeless. Our son became the buffer between us. All our words, all our attention went through him. Did he eat? Did he nap? I'll pick him up from daycare. That was it. Nothing more. At first I cried every night, quietly into my pillow so my son wouldn't hear. I cried for the life I thought I had, for the man I thought I married, for the love I thought was real. But eventually the tears dried, not because the pain went away, but because there was nothing left to cry out. I started noticing little things, how he stayed out later, no longer bothering with excuses, how he came home with the faint scent of perfume clinging to his clothes, how he smiled at his phone when he thought I wasn't looking. It was obvious. He wasn't just cheating. He was choosing her, over and over again, every single day. And me? I was just there. The wife on paper, the mother of his child, the woman who shared his house but not his life. One night I stood in front of the bathroom mirror staring at my reflection. My eyes were hollow, my hair unkempt. I looked nothing like the woman I used to be. "Who are you?" I whispered to myself. I didn't recognize the person staring back. I thought back to the early days of our marriage. The way he used to look at me, like I was the only woman in the world. The way he used to hold me close at night, whispering plans for our future. The way I once felt so proud, so certain, that I had found my forever. Was any of it real, or was it all a lie? The memories twisted inside me, turning sweet moments into cruel reminders. The flowers he sent, the surprises, the long drives where he reached for my hand. Had he been playing a part all along? Or did he change? And if he changed, when? Was it after our son was born? Was it during those business trips I now knew were lies? Or had he been this man all along, hiding behind the mask of the perfect husband? The not knowing was almost as painful as the betrayal itself. Weeks turned into months. My parents noticed the change in me. My mother asked gently, "Is everything okay?" "You look tired." I forced a smile and said, "Just busy. You know how it is." I couldn't tell them. How could I? They adored him. They thought he was the best son-in-law in the world. How could I shatter their illusion? How could I admit that the man I praised so highly had betrayed me so deeply? So I kept it inside. I wore the mask. I smiled at family dinners. I laughed at jokes. And inside I was breaking. But here's the cruel irony. Sometimes I almost convinced myself everything was fine. Sometimes when he sat with our son, helping him build blocks, laughing at his silly babble, I saw the man I used to love. And for a fleeting second I wanted to believe he was still there. But then he'd leave, and the smell of her perfume would linger behind. And I'd remember. I was living with a shameless cheater. The turning point came one night when I couldn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table staring at a blank notebook. I picked up a pen and drew 2 columns. On the left, I wrote what I know. On the right, I wrote what I fear under what I know. I listed it out. He cheated. He doesn't hide it. He doesn't apologize. He doesn't care. Under what I fear, I wrote divorce, losing custody of my son, starting over alone, living with this pain forever. Then I added a 3rd column, what my son deserves. And the answer was so clear it made my chest ache. He deserves a mother who isn't broken. He deserves a home that isn't filled with silence and resentment. He deserves parents who don't teach him that love means swallowing betrayal. I stared at that page for hours. The next morning, I looked at my husband across the breakfast table. Our son babbled happily, smearing yogurt across his cheeks. My husband didn't even look at me, didn't even acknowledge I was there. And in that moment I realized something. The marriage I thought I had no longer existed. Maybe it never had, and yet I was still trapped inside it. That was the moment I knew. My life was about to change, whether I wanted it to or not, because once you see the truth, you can't unsee it, and once the mask slips, you can never put it back on. And that was just the beginning. Little did I know the first clue was only the tip of the iceberg. What I discovered next would change my life forever. Watch part 2 to hear how I caught my husband in the act.